What do the Coachella Valley Firebirds need to do to take the series lead as the AHL Calder Cup Final returns to the desert? We'll talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team every single day. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more because right now, new customers over at FanDuel will get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. If we're meeting for the first time, hello, my name is Erica L. Ayala. I am a sports writer, multimedia sports journalist. I, in addition to hosting Locked On Kraken, am a contributor to CBS Sports. I've written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, and yes, your Seattle Kraken before they were even the Seattle Kraken, or I guess just as they were becoming the Seattle Kraken. Either way, I am glad to be here with you on a game day. That's right. The Coachella Valley Firebirds will host the Hershey Bears as the Calder Cup Finals march along. The series is tied, but you can see tonight's game, 7 p.m. Pacific time, and you can watch on AHL TV or listen on 100.6 The Eagle. And we're going to give you some keys to the game today. If you listened to yesterday's or watched yesterday's episode, I alluded to some things that, a few of the guys, including Shane Wright, can actually do better and probably need to do better in this game. But there are a few things that really stand out to me. Right now, the series is tied 1-1. The Firebirds got the opening win against the Hershey Bears, and then Hershey got a pretty dominant win. Lots of mistakes. I don't want to say necessarily uncharacteristic mistakes, but definitely fixable and undisciplined mistakes by the Firebirds. The good news, though, Kraken and Firebirds fans, is that throughout the entire AHL playoffs, the Firebirds are 6-0 at home, and they are 11-3 overall in their 14 games. So this is a team that knows how to put wins together. They swept the Reign. We know that. The Admirals got one back, and then it was a bounce back game. They dropped 2 early to Calgary, but we've talked about that being likely because they had an extended break. And if you're an everydayer or an OGer, you actually heard Jessica Campbell in an exclusive interview with me talk a little bit about that and how you got to get the bounce back. And so really, we haven't seen this team, except for that Calgary series, lose in consecutive games. And so I think they have a lot of potential, but they have to make some corrections. And that includes, as much as we love talking about Jessica Campbell, and we do here, and we will continue to do so likely whenever the offseason for the Firebirds comes to pass, and hopefully beyond that, depending on where she lands. But there are a few things that we really just have to talk about when it comes to the Firebirds. If we look at all of the teams in the AHL that played at some level in the playoffs, the Firebirds have the 15th best power play at just shy of 18%. And they have the 14th best penalty kill. Now, we talked about it yesterday and a few episodes ago that we are seeing the Firebirds connect. John Hayden had our most recent shorthanded goal. They almost had a shorthanded goal against the Hershey Bears in game 2. So there's a lot of potential. The finish just isn't there. If you were with us, we had special guest Ann Kimmel for our watch along. We're going to do another one Thursday night, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on the show, and of course on our Thursday episode. But it just is the finish. The opportunities are there. The finish is not. And the Coachella Valley Firebirds have to be able to execute just a little bit better. I know that one of our longtime listeners, our OGers, and a member of our Locked On Kraken Insider, Striatic, was a part of the chat. And there were two things that Striatic mentioned. One specific to a player, but I think broadly speaking, there was a little bit of hero hockey, especially late in the game. It felt at times like the Firebirds were just kind of trying to push the issue. And sometimes that's when you don't get the usual finish. And then we also noticed a few things regarding Shane Wright. And I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I want to get back into this. Now, remember, Shane Wright was injured and didn't play really in most of the playoffs. But he was back in the lineup. And I can tell you that, he missed some assignments in the face-off dot that turned out to be costly. And that's just something that you don't want to see. Now, he's only played 8 games, including the last 2 in the Calder Cup playoffs. He's got 6 points, 2 goals, and 4 assists. But I think he's got to be a little bit better at the face-off dot. So that's what I really want to see for him. I think we know that he has potential to be an NHL caliber centerman, and it's tough to come back off of an injury, an injury that had him out for a significant amount of time. So you're getting your timing, you're getting your touch, and you're getting your feel for your teammates back. But if I had to really look at something, he's a -2 on the plus minus. Again, only 8 games. So not a big sample size, but, I do want to see Shane Wright ramp it up. I think that he was in the right spots at time. We did see a net front presence for the Firebirds, which both Ann and I really liked. And that's something that has to continue for the Firebirds. But if I'm giving you 3 keys to tonight's game, it's you got to be more disciplined. Everything from the lack of communication. Chris Driedger went to play a puck behind the net. I don't know that he had a really great understanding of the timing and the rush that was coming toward him. But also, if you're the Firebirds, in my estimation, 2 things need to happen in that situation. Either one of the other skaters has to tell Chris, hands off, we'll handle the puck. But if you're not going to do that, if he's the best player to handle the puck in that moment, you have to, at minimum, communicate to Chris that the attack is coming. It just felt like he was very much thrown off guard. He didn't know how much time he had, and it left him kind of looking like he had his pants at his ankles. It was not a good look for Chris Driedger, but I don't necessarily blame that on Chris. That's a team thing. The good thing is that it's preventable, but it's just communication. I talked about on the stream also missed defensive assignments where you had players that were streaking from center ice that got to the spot before skaters that were kind of just skating along with the Hershey Bears at times. And they made a clinical pass, and that ended up being a really important goal. You really got to hustle. I have complimented this team defensively, and they just didn't have it. So overall, the discipline and the communication, I'm kind of bundling those 2 together. I think special teams have to be better. I told you they've got the 14th best PK in all of the playoffs, and the second best in this series, because the Hershey Bears are at an 84% clip on the PK. That's 9th overall in the total playoffs among playoff teams. And they have the eighth best, power play. If we skate 5-on-5, again, that goes back to discipline. We are the better team. I really do believe that, but we have to prove it. So special teams has to improve. I'm really looking to see what Jessica Campbell can do here. And I alluded to it also. My third thing is just be really relentless, not just in the faceoff dot, but with those 50-50 pucks. I want to see the Firebirds really hunting the puck. I think just like we see with the Seattle Kraken, this organization from the ECHL, we've talked to Tato Hat about this, all the way up to the NHL. We know this team, this franchise wants to play fast. They want to forecheck. And, we have the 3 Fs that we usually talk about with the Seattle Kraken, but I think it goes hand in hand. I want to see a strong forecheck, and I want to see a little bit more lightness. This is a team that when they attack, they skate their best. They play their best style of hockey. They want to command the game. We saw that a little bit in the third period when I believe it was the Marianne Studenich goal. And that was just right off the hop early in the third period, and they got after it. They really attacked the third early. They attacked the first early, even though Hershey did score first in game 1 and game 2. But they have to attack. They have to have that fun. They have to be playing fun, fast, and of course, forechecking. So I want to see the 3 Fs. I want to see improvements on special teams, and I need more discipline. That's what's going to get the win for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Of course, the bonus, I feel like it's not really a bonus. It should be unspoken at this moment, is that you are going to have a home crowd. And this is a hockey-loving community in the Valley. And of course, it doesn't hurt that you have the voice of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, Jason JD Hernandez, reminding you to get fired up. It's going to be a good game. I look forward to being able to recap what I'm hoping will be a win, of course, for the Coachella Valley Firebirds on our Wednesday show. But for the remainder of today's show, I'm actually going to take you over to our friends at Locked On NHL Prospects. Now, you heard me make the case for Zev Buium yesterday. He is my pick in the Locked On NHL mock draft, but I also mentioned some other players, or really one other player that I thought could be a good fit. I want you to hear what our friends over at Locked On NHL Prospects have to say about the top picks for defenders in our Locked On NHL mock draft. And then we'll close out the show, of course, getting you ready for tonight's game, but also asking you the question of the day. After you've heard about the top defensive prospects, is Zev Buium still the best pick for the Seattle Kraken? At least in our mock draft. That's the question of the day. I'm going to give you some information so you can answer in the comments. Let me know. You can also follow me at Black Rosie Media, or of course at Locked On Kraken. Let me know what you think about Zev and some of the other prospects who we'll talk about in the coming days, coming weeks, because we've got the real deal NHL draft coming up. But next, I want you to hear from our folks over at Locked On NHL Prospects about some of the top D players that were selected in the Locked On NHL mock draft. Mentioned it at the top of the show, but today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now, we know that summertime is a time for the beach. It's time for relaxing, but it's also time to crown champions. We are looking to do that in the AHL. We know that the NBA already has one. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics, but you can still wager on the NHL Stanley Cup Final. Can the Florida Panthers close out the series? Who's going to be a top performer, or will Edmonton push the series longer? Well, you can find some of the odds over at FanDuel, and new customers right now, you get $200 in bonus bets with any winning bet of at least $5. That's $200 if you can bet everything from MVP to scoring lines, assists, saves, all of that you can find on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Wishing you luck. Remember to gamble, of course, responsibly. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. And as promised, I'm going to take you over to the segment where you get to hear from our experts on Locked On NHL prospects about the picks for the top defenders. The first 16, we're really focused kind of on the first 11 because we're focused on D-men. But here is the list of the NHL mock draft, and you will hear our host Hadi and Sebastian walk through that in just a moment. So without further ado, let me take you over to yesterday's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects, where they break down the first 16 picks in the NHL, the Locked On NHL mock draft.
Overall here, we've got an interesting selection from the Anaheim Ducks selecting Artyom Levshinov, possibly the prospect that everyone's expecting to go at least in the top 3. And I think the Anaheim Ducks really need a right-handed defenseman, a right-handed player overall. And in terms of right-handed Ds, Levshinov's up there with the best. I mean, he's so toolsy. He's the most mobile, rangy defenseman not named Anton Salayev in this draft. I love the ability to close gaps in transition. I love the energy, the effort level, the aggression that he brings. He's got fantastic work ethic. He's a funny guy. He's a great person. Interviews really well. Ticks a lot of boxes for NHL GMs. On top of that, he's got some sneaky offensive skill. I mean, he's got a bomb of a shot. Pretty interesting hands in a pinch. You know, he doesn't really flash stick handling skill all that often, but when he needs to get out of trouble, he can do it. Great passing ability as well. He's a player who does need to kind of shape up his decision making, get a bit more consistent with his reads. But I think the habits are something you can work with, especially offensively. He's always jumping into rushes. He's always kind of beating opponents to open ice on the weak side in transition. There's a bunch of stuff to work with Artyom Levshinov. So I think this is a great selection at 3rd overall. There's a couple defensemen that I prefer personally, just based on what I look for in defensemen, but Levshinov's about as sure a bet for the NHL as you get at this range. And yeah, I understand fully the Anaheim Ducks going for him because the other options in terms of right-handed players, I'd say are probably going to be available around 7, 8, 9, 10. Levshinov's not passing 5, that's for sure. Moving on to number 6, we have got the Locked On Utah unnamed team. Yeah, I think it's Utah HC. Has it been officially confirmed yet? Regardless.
I mean, for the first season, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But Utah HC picks up Zane Parekh, the right-handed defenseman of the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL. He's my top-ranked defenseman, incredibly mobile, incredibly capable with the puck. He's composure personified. His ability to just stay calm under pressure is ridiculous. He's a true definition of a quarterback in all 3 zones. What I mean by that is he dictates which direction the play takes. That's the most interesting part for me of Zane Parekh's game, is that he's the one controlling play almost at all times. And when he's not controlling play, I think his defense isn't even half as bad as being made out to be. The tape I watched in the OHL playoffs and in the Memorial Cup, like he was shutting down some of the CHL's top forwards, right? Like that wasn't bad tape from Parekh defensively.
It's not. Like, he still has a lot of raw habits in his defensive play, but he plays with a high motor. He's quite vicious quite often. Like, he plays with some violence. He's 6 feet, 178 pounds. He's not tiny by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I could see him topping out at like 195, 200 when he's a full-time NHLer, which is perfectly fine, especially when you are such a dynamic offensive defenseman, with which Zane Parekh is. There's definitely some consistency issues defensively in terms of engagement. He can be a little bit of a passenger at times in the defensive zone, but there's nothing there aren't many things there that I don't see as fixable or as like things that can be progressed a significant amount with targeted development. And I think that Utah would be a very fun franchise for him to land in. I mean, as a first draft selection after the move, Zane Parekh is like as entertaining and dynamic a player as you could hope to get.
Yeah, I think with Zane Parekh with the offense, I mean, if he develops properly, works on his defense a bit, I see a point per game defenseman. Like, there's real offensive potential with him.
And if he's playing with Dmitry Simashev of all people, as
you've got the perfect
picks, that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the perfect insulator for him long term. A player who's going to be able to kind of allow him a bit more freedom offensively. Let's move on to 7th overall. We have the Ottawa Senators, Locked On Sens, picking up Sam Dickinson, the big left-handed defenseman out of the London Knights in the OHL. What a fantastic run he's had this season in the OHL. Was a key player for London throughout the entire OHL playoffs, and almost won them the game in the Memorial Cup final. Like, he was one of the main reasons why London was able to stay with the game up until overtime. He scored the game time goal for London on a half breakaway as a defenseman. Like, that's kind of a testament to what kind of game he plays. Dickinson is all aggression. Like, defensively, he's in your face. He's punishing. He's hitting you. He's making plays with a stick that I don't think other defensemen in this draft are capable of. For me, he's the best defensive defenseman in this draft. On top of having real aggression offensively, he's jumping into rushes. He's flying up the ice, carrying pucks himself, or playing kind of give and goes, moving off the puck. A lot of really interesting habits offensively, but I think he's that pure aggression kind of holds him back at times, right?
For sure. There's definitely a bit of a lack of composure at times, or of calculated decision making and timing. For instance, he just defaults to being aggressive, which is really entertaining and works fantastically with his frame and his mobility at the OHL level, but will need some tinkering before he makes the jump to professional hockey. But this is a 6'3", 203-pound defenseman who skates like the wind, put up over a point a game while playing second pairing minutes on both the power play and even strength for London this season. And of course, it was a tremendous team, but still, minutes-wise, it was more limited than most other high-end draft-eligible defensemen in the CHL. And he's a two-way guy who's mainly like loved for his defensive impact. So going over a point a game with those parameters is very impressive as well. So definitely growing room in his offensive development. A true two-way potential piece. I think be very interesting for the Ottawa Senators, who already have some very strong pieces on their left side. I could see them moving Thomas Chabot at some point in the next couple seasons, and Jacob Chikrin as well. But like Jake Sanderson and Sam Dickinson as the crux of the defensive core, like holding down the left side long term, is really, really enticing.
For sure. Moving on to 8th overall, we have Zeev Buium going to the Locked On Kraken. The Seattle Kraken picking him up. Their 8th overall pick here. An average size left-handed defenseman. He was measured in at 6 foot, which is good for his game and good for NHL teams wanting to pick him up maybe earlier than he's projected. He's the calmest and most poised defenseman in this draft, even more than Zane Parekh. He's got left offensive skill, I would say, for sure. But there's still some really interesting stuff he does offensively. The way he moves from the point, the way he shifts forwards in front of him, forwards who are trying to kind of stick check him and try to get a breakaway. You're not getting the puck off of him. It's ridiculous how good he is at that. And he has those clutch genes all season. This has been one of the most consistently clutch players in the 2024 NHL draft class. Scored the insurance goal in the gold medal game of the World Juniors for Team USA, assisted on the insurance goal in Denver University's national championship game. So just been full on money all season, 50 points in 42 games, like just ridiculous production, something we've never seen before from an NCAA freshman. And he's good defensively. Like, he's genuinely so good defensively. I've loved his ability to close gaps off the rush, make plays defensively. It's been amazing to watch all year. 11th overall, Locked On Sabres pick up Calder Yakimchuk, right-handed defenseman of the Calgary Hitmen. He's aggression personified, right? Like, everything about his game is all about being aggressive, correct?
Absolutely. He's aggressive with the puck on his stick. He is a really good puck handler, and he uses that as much as he possibly can to advance the puck up the ice. Defensively, he plays with violence and physicality and, again, aggression. He really is aggression personified. He's a 6'3", 202-pound right shot defenseman with really significant offensive potential. He has an absolute bomb of a shot from the point. He uses his puck handling to access dangerous areas in the offensive zone and thread pucks towards the slot. There's a real lack of refinement in most areas of his game, and the upside here is a bit more longer term, especially for like a top 11 type of draft pick. He's going to need 3 to 4 to 5 years to develop into a trustable NHL player. But if he absolutely hits, you're looking at your number 2 big violent offensive defenseman who might need some insulation at 5-on-5 because he's at his best when he's taking big risks, but just a really, really fun player here. And while the floor is a little bit lower, the upside's definitely enticing.
For sure. I want to see, I like composure in my defense, which is why I'm a bit lower on Yakimchuk than others. But listen, in terms of offensive upside, he's up there with the best.
So you heard what our experts had to say. Question of the day is, after everything you heard about the top defensemen, at least as they are in our mock draft, how do you like the pick of Zev Buium at number 8 for the Seattle Kraken? Coming up next, I want to get into that a little bit more and also get you primed for maybe some players that I would consider, particularly on the defensive side, but maybe also forwards as well. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at Policy Genius. We know that life can be very, very unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan can give you and your family a financial safety net to protect against some of those unknowns. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family quick and easy. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Policy Genius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com or click on the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Again, that's policygenius.com. All right, Seattle hockey fans, it's a game day in the Valley. The Coachella Valley Firebirds taking on the Hershey Bears in Game 3. In case you missed it, earlier in the show, I gave you my 3 keys. And of course, the 3 keys ended with the 3 Fs: fun, fast, and forechecking. Also want to see special teams improve and overall, and then why it's my number 1 key to the game. You got to be more disciplined, Coachella Valley. I know you have it in you. So let's put our best skate forward, if you will, and take it to the Hershey Bears so we can get ever closer to closing out that unfinished business. Speaking of unfinished business, you heard from Locked On NHL prospects, Hattie and Sebastian, breaking down the top defensemen in our Locked On NHL mock draft. Again, the question of the day is, do you still believe in my pick of Zev Buium at number 8 in our mock draft? I'm going to tell you, there's some other names on that list. Here's the list once again for those watching on YouTube. There's some names on that list that I do like. I mentioned Zane Perek yesterday. You know, Iginla is an interesting name, not a defenseman, but we're talking mostly about defensemen. But overall, I do like, and I'm sticking with my pick of Zev Buium. Now, I would be lying if I said I'm not intrigued by having a little bit more size. And there are some players in the draft. The Yakimchuk comes up and comes to mind. Definitely a player I looked at. But overall, given what some of our experts who know the prospects, who are following, you know, the lower levels or the junior levels, of hockey, these draft eligible players, I still like the pick of Zev Buium. I talked a little bit about some of the character traits that I really think are intriguing. He is the one who pushed the issue of hockey. I like how he approaches things, and I've listened to some of his interviews, and we'll play some of those clips in the days leading up to the draft because there's just something about this young hockey player He has a confidence, and that comes because he has put in the work. And that's the kind of work ethic that we need more of in the Seattle Kraken organization, not only because we're still in our bootstrapping era, right? We're still in our bootstrapping era, but also that's what's going to build a championship team and a championship pipeline. And that's what I want for the Firebirds, for the Mavericks, and of course, for the Seattle Kraken. So again, question of the day, are you still with me? Or I guess I could also ask, were you ever with me? What do you think about Zev Buium? Zev. I'm going to get it right. I believe it's Zev Buium. What do you like about Buium? Do you still think I should pick him at number 8 in our Locked On NHL mock draft? With the caveat that, again, at least 7 players were not available to me when I made the pick. That being said, even if some of those players were available, especially at the defensive side of things, I think I'm still going with Zeev. That being said, I want to break down also what our experts over at Locked On NHL Prospects are saying about some of the forwards. I'm pretty confident that if I were the general manager, I would pick a defenseman, especially given the defensemen that are in this draft and expected or projected to go within the top 10. I like that. However, I want to entertain the idea later on this week if there's any other player that maybe I would select at 8 if I wasn't, as I am, committed to selecting a defenseman. You'll have to stick around here at Locked On Kraken throughout the week to find out the answer. But again, question of the day, do you still like Zeev Buium at number 8 for our Locked On NHL mock draft? That's going to do it for our show. You know how we end. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Hold fast. Stay true. We say loud and proud always, let's go Kraken. But that starts tonight with a Firebirds chant of get fired up. And if you're in Acrisure Arena, you'll get to hear JD Hernandez say that. But no fear, we'll still have a good time here on Locked On Kraken. I will catch you on the next episode. You know how I like to end these. Peace out, everybody.